Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Today's guest is an illustrator. His name is Barry E. Jackson. Peace, Barry. How are you?
I'm just fine, Matthew. Nice to talk to you.
Nice to meet you as well, sir. So earlier before we started, we were talking about something that was kind of depressing. We won't get into it, but we will laugh it off and continue to go on. And I'll start by saying, how's your week going besides that?
Uh, yeah. Other than that, the week is fine.
Okay.
So I've been doing my artwork, and I teach a class in art. I actually teach a Zoom class, and I enjoy that very much. I have a YouTube channel that shows demonstrations and ways to do things, and I actually interview other artists on the YouTube channel. So yeah, I'm doing the thing I like to do.
Awesome. And before the YouTube channel and your Zoom classes, were you doing classes in a classroom?
Oh, yeah, I taught at Art Center College for 7 years. And
Okay.
I taught at Cal State Northridge for, I think, maybe about 5 years. And the Otis School of Art and Design, I taught there for a couple of years as well. So I've done a lot of teaching, actually. And I've
Okay.
accumulated a lot of lessons. And that way, when students take my class, they can get a pretty wide range of subjects that have to do with art.
Okay. Okay. So take me back to the beginning. Where did your love for art start?
Okay, well, it is a funny story. None of my parents were not really artists,
Mm,
so I had a compulsion to draw. And I remember when I was about 10, my mom brought home a drawing pad, and they said, "Well, maybe see what he will do with this." Well, I just I guess you'd say I got kind of obsessed with the drawing pad, and then I pretty soon I filled it up and then wanted another one. And then when I was in classrooms and as a young kid, I excelled in art. I was one of the people that was good at it, and I didn't know everything I needed to know, certainly, but I showed some promise. And then what happened to me was I think art also became an escape for me, in that when my life wasn't going well, or when I was having trouble, maybe with friends or all kinds of things like that, you could kind of go into your own little art world and you could make things and feel good about yourself. So I think that's one of the things that fed me to continue with art. But something more important than that is that when it came time to go to college, I decided that I wanted to major in art, and this was a big problem for my parents. My father was a military colonel, and my mom was a very conservative housewife type, and they were really against trying to make a career in art.
I've heard
And
that too.
yeah, you've heard that too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because there's this belief that it there's no
Money in
industry
it.
or something,
Yeah.
and there really is an industry.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to, but there was another thing that motivated me, and that was I didn't know a lot of artists when I was in high school. I wanted to be around other artists. And I found that when I went to college and I majored in art, I kind of found my people. It was kind of like they kind of spoke the same language as me, and they were interested in the same things I was interested in. And I bonded with people on that level. That we share art, we do art. Have you seen this show? Did you see this or do that? And so yeah, I think it was a real good thing for me, because then I felt like I was a normal person.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you're an artist all by yourself, you don't necessarily feel that normal. You kind of wonder, am I just a weird guy doing a weird thing?
Yeah, no one really talks the language you talk until you get into high school or college, and then there are other people that does the 3D
Yeah,
animations or the illustrations, the graphic arts, and everything like that. Then it changes for you, and you find your tribe or your crowd.
that's a great way of putting it. I'd say I found my tribe. I then transferred to a professional school called the Art Center College of Design in Pasadena. And that's where a lot of professional illustrators come from. And the classes are taught by professional illustrators, and you can get to know them and get to know how they work, and you can get a lot of good advice. And so when I went there, there were a couple of very influential teachers that taught me things, and I started to put a portfolio together. And at the time I was at that particular school, they emphasized that you have an individualized look. Uh, you know, don't look like everybody else. And that's something that I also excelled at. Uh, I was able to come up with a look that didn't look like anyone else. And my unique look kind of led to my success because when I showed my portfolio to various places, I was kind of memorable in that regard. So uh, my big break was probably showing my work to a guy named Ralph Bakshi, and he's known for adult animation.
Okay.
And he did the film Fritz the Cat. He did the film Wizards. He did American Pop. He did Cool World, and all of those films. I was very much, or I should say, American Pop. His Lord of the Rings, American Pop, and Cool World were the ones I was involved in.
Okay.
And that
Awesome.
that that gave me a paycheck for years, you
Wait, wait.
know.
So you were involved in Lord of the Rings from the very
Yeah.
beginning? Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, the first Bakshi Lord of the Rings movie. And
Okay.
then he did a movie called American Pop that was a little bit about the history of music in America. And then he did another film called Cool World with Brad Pitt and Kim
Mm.
Basinger.
What
And
was it like working on, backing up for a second, what was it like working on Lord of the Rings? Because that had to be a tedious job, right?
well, it was very strange, but when he saw my portfolio, he really liked the art that I had done quite a bit. And I actually was told him that his films, like Wizards, had influenced me when I was in school. And I think he liked to hear that he influenced a young artist. And so he gave me pretty much the clear path to do whatever I wanted. He would say, we need, the Castle of Isengard here. Just go ahead and just go do that. And he wouldn't bother me. He wouldn't have a layout person or a supervisor or anything. He would just say, go paint that.
Mhm.
And then, the land of Mordor, just go paint that. It was like a dream come true, really. He didn't hinder me. And so I grew a great deal when you've got a boss that just says, hey, man, give me something cool. And that's what I did. I post a lot of my Lord of the Rings stuff on Instagram.
Okay.
And yeah,
So it's actually there for people to see. They just actually have to pay attention to what they're looking for, right?
well, yeah, I usually say it's from Bakshi's Lord of the Rings, or it's from Bakshi's Cool World or American Pop or those kinds of things. And
Cool World and
yeah,
American Pop up there too. Okay.
yeah, and I learned a lot about how to approach paintings and how to do things. But Bakshi had kind of a rough patch. I think some of his films didn't make as much money as they were supposed to,
Okay.
and I left and became a freelance artist. And
Okay.
that's when I got discovered by the record companies and by the movie poster industry. So
Question
that's
about it. During when did you know that you wanted to do illustration or graphic arts? Was that in high school or did it come later in college?
well, really, the truth is, I didn't even know what an illustrator really was when I
Okay.
was in high school. I went to college, and they talked about you could be an illustrator, you could be a graphic designer, you could be this or that. But I actually was very nervous about not being able to work. So when I went to the Art Center College of Design, my major was called advertising illustration.
Okay.
So I took classes in advertising and I took classes in illustration. And I learned a little bit about both worlds. But I don't recommend my path. I really kind of wish I hadn't done that. I wish I would have just done artwork only, but I didn't have the confidence. I thought, what if I don't make it as an illustrator? I need a backup plan. I need that kind of thing. But I was able to excel as an illustrator. But then when I left Bakshi Productions, I became probably first known for movie posters like Escape from New York or Terror Train, Friday the 13th. I did Disney's Fantasia. I did,
Friday, you said Friday the 13th.
yeah,
Which one?
Friday the 13th, 3 in 3D.
Okay.
And I post that from time to time on Instagram.
Okay.
I also got discovered by the record companies. And
Hmm.
so I began to do album covers. My first album cover was for Neil Young. And then I later did Ronnie James Dio. And then I did 3 album covers for ZZ Top. And I did album covers for the band. I did poster for the Grateful Dead. I worked for a lot of pretty big name people.
When you're working with a band like ZZ Top, do you get a chance to have them sit with you and talk about the album cover
Yeah,
art?
yeah. ZZ Top is the band I got to know the best. Billy Gibbons, the lead guitarist, actually came over to my house for dinner. And I showed him the album cover, and we took pictures with my brand new baby daughter. And he was a very nice guy. And then he took me out on the town in his limousine with his limousine driver, and we went to a couple of clubs and had a good time. So, he's a really cool guy. But sometimes you don't get to talk to the band very much. Neil Young was very. He wasn't. I don't know. Sometimes the person who's art directing you or who hired you wants to handle all the communication. So sometimes you don't get to meet the person or the band that you're working for. So I didn't really get to meet Neil Young, and I really wish I would have. I would like to
Okay.
have met him.
So who signs off on it when you're dealing with a Neil Young type of person? Is it like their art director or is it like a manager who signs? Is it the label who
Well,
signs off on it?
well, Neil Young was with Warner Brothers, but there are things called design studios. And these particular design studios will get the job from Warner Brothers, and they incorporate all the graphics and packaging involved in an album cover. But they also hire the illustrator. They then go visit Neil Young. Neil, what do you want on your album cover? And he had a lot of specific instructions. It was really weird, just kind of like a laundry list of things he wanted on the album cover. And so I then got that list of things that had to be on it, and I do some rough drawings, and they get okayed, and then I go on and I do a grand finished painting in acrylic paint,
Okay.
and that's how it was back then.
Okay.
So then that has to be approved by Neil Young, and I'm sure it has to be approved by the record company as well. I mean, but it was no problem. There was nothing controversial about the record album. It was for his album that was called Trans, if anyone's interested.
Okay.
So so yeah, sometimes I did get to meet the band and Levon Helm and Rick Danko, who are pretty famous musicians for a band that was very popular in the 80s and 70s too. And the heavy metal artist Ronnie Dio, I talked with on the phone, and he was a very nice guy as well. So my experiences were all pretty positive with these various groups.
Okay. I had a question and then it just slipped my mind. I'm trying to remember it now as we speak. I'm getting kind of just drawn into the information that you're giving me right now.
Yeah,
Did you? Oh,
well,
yes, this is what I wanted to say. Did you have a favorite, like a top three or top five favorite people that you had a chance to work with or just work on their album cover?
well, I'm a fan. I'm a pretty big fan of Neil Young, but I have to say my best experience was working with ZZ Top because they would fly me all over the country. I'd go to, they'd fly me to Memphis. They'd put me up in a hotel. I'd present the art. I'd show things, and then, I'd get it finished, and then they might come visit me, or then I might take art to them, and they really used me a lot.
It sounds like it
And
might be a good smoke session. I don't know if that ever happened, but maybe.
no, that did not happen. There was not a
Okay.
smoke session, but
Okay.
there was a occasional tilt of a glass or two, because
Okay.
they like to drink the stuff, so that part was okay.
Okay.
I
Okay.
had the time I went out on the town with Billy, we did tequila shots, so that's their form of entertainment, I guess.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, they were fun people to work with. I thought I was a very lucky guy to have an opportunity to work with ZZ Top.
Okay.
I also did a number of rap album covers, but they were compilation albums in the very early days of rap.
What compilation albums were those?
Did you ever know Mixmaster G?
No, I don't. I can't
Okay.
recall.
He was one of the early guys that did the thing with the records and stuff, and
A
then
DJ.
yeah, he was a DJ guy very early on, Mixmaster G. And another one was it was called Uptown is Kicking It. And it was through MCA Records, and it was a compilation of different rap artists. This was really early though. We're
Yeah, I
talking
was just about
about,
to say, like, you have to be going way back, like the very start of it,
yeah, like I would
early
say
80s or something like that.
early 80s. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's when it was.
Mm-hmm.
So but anyway, I was painting in traditional medium back then. I'd draw it and then I'd paint it on an illustration board and things like that. But then, the world went digital. And so I had to go digital and, learn how to do everything in Photoshop. And, it was a challenge to do, but ultimately, ultimately it was good because I could do illustrations so much faster once I learned Photoshop. What
Yeah.
would take
That
5 days to do in acrylics, you could do in a day and a half with Photoshop. So
big time game changer, right?
it really was a big time game changer. The industry also changed because now, album covers, there aren't really doing album covers anymore, really. I mean, the record companies are all going to Spotify, and we don't have that album cover thing we used to have
Man,
where,
those were some of the best times ever, man, where you could sit there and go through an album cover and look at the credits and the people that got thanked, everybody that was on the album. You could see the bassist who was the bassist on an album. Those were some of the best times ever, man. And now I
yeah,
think even though they have replaced it with this current digital art, now they're bringing it back where you can see the credits on certain things. At least on Apple Music, you can kind of go back and check that out now that they're trying to load it up
well,
and let you
I
see what
know
they
that
have
they
going
have
on.
some sort of digital representation of who the artist is. Even if you go to iTunes, I know they have like a little picture. But you got to remember, it used to be your album cover would be a billboard when the band was coming out, and the look on that album cover was really important. So when you walked into the record store, they had posters of your art up there, and you're selling ZZ Top. You're
Hmm.
selling these famous artists, and if you go to their concert, they'd all be wearing your art on T-shirts and stuff. So
Very
everybody
true.
would be there, all wearing your art. It was honestly a great experience, a great time, and you know and ZZ Top was also big. I mean, they were selling out arenas with 17,000 people and things like that, and they would draw 50,000 people in Dallas, Texas, and they were just a huge band, and they've since had one of their members pass away, and they're not quite what they were, but they have a legacy.
Yes, they
Um,
do. A big one.
but yeah, now, like I say, when things went digital, the world of animation exploded, and that's when I got busy working in animation, and I went to work at DreamWorks. I went to work on the Prince of Egypt movie they did.
Getting into DreamWorks, let me ask you about that. At what point in life, where were you when you started working for DreamWorks?
I was about 39 years
Okay.
old, and
Okay.
so really the truth is I was one of the older guys there at 39, and I worked on the Prince of Egypt movie, and then they hired me to be the first production designer on the Shrek movie.
Oh
So
wow.
that ended up being kind of a fiasco. Shrek, I actually am making a little film about the origin of Shrek and what happened in the very early days of Shrek, and I'm going to put it on my YouTube channel. It's the Zoom Art Studio is the name of my channel. But yeah, we got there, and at the time that I started on Shrek, 3D was relatively new. This was like 1995.
Okay. Okay.
And we had some people that understood 3D and how to make 3D animation and stuff, but the truth was there was all kinds of new equipment and new software and things, and hiring people who didn't really know what they were doing, and there's a lot of sifting through that. And then there were problems with the Shrek book, because it actually is a children's book, and if you ever see the book, it's nothing like the movie. So it became a thing about, well, how do we represent this book? And we didn't have a script, and it was really hard to understand what kind of movie it was. People started fighting. There was a lot of problems, and uh, so one of the things the studio did was, let's make a test out of Shrek. Let's do a Shrek test. And so we were able to construct a 3D Shrek, and we were able to construct a 3D alley where he was going to meet a mugger, and then he would dispose of the mugger. That would then show that we understood how to do the movie. Well, the truth was, they approved our art every step of the way, and ultimately they decided our test was too scary looking. And you can see that test on the Zoom Art School channel if you're interested in taking a look at it. It is really weird. I get a lot of comments from people saying, "Hey, that doesn't look like Shrek," or "What's wrong with Shrek?" All that, but they don't understand that all we had to go on was this children's book, and we were trying to sort of stick to the book. And later on in the process, and this is years later, they turned Shrek into really a romance story,
They
where
did.
Shrek,
They did.
Shrek, yeah, where Shrek had to be kind of a leading man. And, how do you make an ugly ogre look like a leading man? And so there were different problems to
That's what I was
solve.
trying to figure out how you were going to tie that in, because if you guys were going from children and everything, what from robbery, a guy robbing, beating up a mugger or something like that, like how did it get to that point where it turns into a love story?
Yeah. Yeah, well, like I say, the script was developing as we went along, but they got kind of, well, that's hard to say. There was so much discord and so many problems between the various artists on that film. They actually brought us all to a restaurant basement, and they had a psychiatrist come in and try to talk to the crew, help the crew talk to each other, communication, all of that kind of thing. It didn't do any good though.
Mm.
There were a lot of very angry people with hurt feelings and hurt pride and things like that, and they ended up letting the whole crew go. They fired the whole first crew of Shrek, and to tell you the truth, they hired another crew, and they fired all of them too.
Mm.
So Shrek was very close to just being thrown in the trash. They were very, very close to doing that.
And
But
how long
really,
had you guys been working on it before when they started firing crews?
I worked on it about a year, and I think the next crew worked on it about a year. But what happened was the storyboard artists are the ones who saved the movie. They began to kind of get together and think of funny scenes. And there's a storyboard artist named Conrad Vernon who came up with the idea of the gingerbread man scene, where Farquaad comes in and says, "Do you know the Muffin Man?" And the little gingerbread guy's on a table, and he cuts off the leg of the gingerbread man.
Good
Sort of like
God,
torture.
man.
Yeah, that was one of the storyboards that helped everybody understand what the movie should be.
Okay.
So it became a fractured fairy tale, and it wasn't really a story of an ogre in medieval times, which is what I was doing.
Okay.
It was really kind of a romantic story and made fun of fairy tales. And once they had that together, it started to sail.
Okay.
So Shrek became, I think, the biggest animation franchise. I don't know if Toy Story has made more money, but certainly Shrek is as much, or if not more so.
How long does
And
it take normally to from start to finish to get an what's illustrated movie like that done,
yeah, well,
completed?
Shrek was a long, hard process. It took about 5 years,
Okay.
and a sum of money they won't admit to.
Oh
I
yeah, I'm
mean,
quite sure there's a lot of money going into
they
something like
spent
that.
zillions on that movie. But they got a hit out of it, and then they were able to make four sequels, and they're making Shrek 5 right now. So they're going to have a fifth Shrek movie, and they had a Broadway play out of Shrek. So, I mean, Shrek turned into a cash cow for DreamWorks.
Do you
And
yourself ask to be a part of the next the next ones, or do they just call you in, or do they go with a different team?
well, I don't know. I have not been summoned to come back to Shrek, and I think for a while there was a stigma associated with the first group that had so much fighting,
Mm,
and I think you kind of get tainted by that. So I went to other places and did other things. I have done. I did production design a kids movie called The Ant Bully, and I
okay.
did another movie called. And when I say I did it, that means I was the production designer, who's the top guy. So the Ant Bully was a pretty well-known film, and then there's one called Escape from New York, Escape from Planet Earth, that I did up in Vancouver, which was a top job for me as well. And then I also did a Cartoon Network movie called Fire Breather, where I production designed that. And
What made
I
the one
made
in
a
Canada so different for you? What was such a great experience about that one?
well, the group that did the movie Escape from Planet Earth was the same group that did a movie called Hoodwinked. And if you don't know, this movie Hoodwinked was made for $9 million, and it made $100 million.
Mm,
So they get to do whatever they want for the next movie. And Escape from Planet Earth was a story about aliens in Area 51 who want to break out of jail and get home again. And so, we essentially designed Area 51. We designed the desert around it. We designed the planets that the aliens came from. We did all, and then we designed the aliens themselves, all the different types of aliens that were in the place. So
okay.
it was a very challenging job, but it also had.
And that was a Escape from Area 51, right?
Yeah, it's actually
Okay.
called Escape from Planet Earth.
Okay, I'm sorry. Escape from
Yeah,
Planet
but
Earth.
but
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
it was like that. And so
Yeah.
I went on to do other projects and other things. I've also done a number of credit sequences.
I have a
So,
question about that before you go forward.
whatever you wanna
Uh-huh.
ask me.
Do you believe aliens exist?
Oh, do I believe aliens exist? I
Mm-hmm.
used to not to. I used to not to. Not I used to not believe it, but the way the Air Force has been talking the last few years, I guess there's something going on. There's something
Has to
going
be.
on they can't
Maybe.
explain.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say I kind of lean that, yeah, there's probably some sort of life around from somewhere else that's checking Earth out, and it's been going on for a while. The when I also, another thing that made me think aliens exist is when you saw those first pictures from the Webb telescope that they just launched not too
Yeah.
long ago, and they
Mm-hmm.
showed all those galaxies and all of that universe out there, and I was just kind of like, oh, holy cow, there's got to be
There has to
more.
be something, right?
There has to
Something
be
else.
something. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I kind of lean that way, but I don't go to like conventions or anything, or I don't. I
Mm-hmm.
just have my own private thoughts.
Yeah, I have my private thoughts about it, and then I have certain conversations with people who I can talk to about that. And
Mm.
then it's just all about the information that you're getting and receiving, and if you're able to comprehend and break it down, and what makes sense to you and what doesn't. If you do
Yeah,
believe in it, you believe in it. If you don't, you don't. And then just go from there, you know?
yeah, it's hard because nowadays you can do so many things to videos. You can fake a video pretty easily.
Very weak, very
So
easy.
so that's one problem. But my thing is if the Air Force is saying there's things we see we don't understand, I'm prone to think, well, that there's probably something to it.
So yeah, for me, that was the thing that kind of got me more curious into it when the Air Force started saying there are objects that we're trying to catch when we're doing these missions, when we're doing these test missions, and we can't catch them. They're moving at such a high rate of speed that when we get close enough to them, within a millisecond or a half a second, they're in another direction and we can't catch up to them. And we
Yeah,
have the best flying, technologically sound planes that there are that man
yeah,
can make, and we can't catch up to these objects. And they have them on camera. I forgot the commander's name, but he said, he's like, I've been flying and looking at these things, and every time I got close enough to them, they would dip off. They would head toward the ocean, and when they would
yeah,
get toward the surface of the ocean, when I would try to get close enough to them, they would shoot up into the air. And he said it's not normal for objects to take off that fast without
yeah,
having uh, propulsion, without having without giving that off a, like, I forgot what type of signature he said they give off, and then to reach heights that high
yeah,
in 2 seconds, and it takes
yeah,
me 5 seconds or whatever it was to get there to wherever they are, 30, 40, 50, 60,000 feet up in the air. So unless they're playing around with us, you know, and it's or is their way of saying, hey, this is actually real and we're going to drop a bomb on you guys soon to let you guys know that this is happening. I don't
you
know.
know, I I don't fear them. I think that if they're smart enough to figure out a way to get to Earth, they must be pretty intelligent.
I would like to think so.
And I don't think they would wanna, I don't think intelligent beings want to destroy other intelligent beings. I
I
except
have,
on Earth, except on Earth.
yeah, and I have my feelings about that too. If I was a civilization that came here from somewhere else, my goal would be to come here, look at what's going on, and if I like it, I'd probably take it over.
Well, you could do that, or you could study it and
Yeah,
just simply
that could be it too.
I mean,
You
chances are their civilization is probably much more advanced than ours, and I don't know. But
you
like
could
I
you could
said,
study it, or you could just be stuck here and realize that the only way that you're going to survive is by using the people that are here and set up a whole plotting scheme in the background to make sure that it works. You never know. We don't know what actually happened if it happens. So
yeah, there's a lot of mystery there, and
yeah, a whole lot.
you can but like I say, it doesn't weigh heavily on my mind.
No, no. It's just one of those conversations I sit around with a couple of my friends and we sit and we talk about.
Mm.
And we just go over different ideals and concepts, topics and issues about it. So
Mm. Well, yeah, it's certainly a provocative topic. Um, I I can't. I've never seen one myself. I'll say that. So
and
that's
that's
also
fine.
makes it hard.
That's fine. But we get back to you working on escape from planet Earth, and then you
Mhm.
progress to what else after that?
Oh, well, I began to do a number of well, I did the Fire Breather movie for Cartoon Network, and then I did the I started to do title sequences. And if you see the opening of Mary Poppins Returns, it opens up with about 17 of my paintings.
Mm,
So they wanted the beginning of Mary Poppins to look like a painting, like they did in the first Julie Andrews one. And then, I did a series of paintings for the director of that film. And then I also worked on the Wizard of Oz, the newer one called The Great and Powerful Oz, or Oz of the Great and Powerful. It's called, with James Franco in
okay.
it, and I'm trying to think. Michelle Williams and Mila Kunis were in it, and it, I worked with a studio called Ewan Company, and we did a lot of artwork for it, and it's a really neat opening credit sequence. And then not too long ago, there was a mini series called The Crowded Room.
Mm.
And it was about a killer, a guy who accidentally, or I shouldn't say, he has multiple personalities and kills people and things like that. Or actually, I don't think he kills, I think he tries to kill somebody. But anyway, the point is, I did the opening credit sequence for that. And I did it as one continuous changing painting. And it's kind of a neat credit sequence. So I kind of work on things like that nowadays. Although I'm also, you can see behind me here, I'm doing my own painting as well, and I'm pursuing a gallery to represent me. And I would like to sort of finish my career by doing my own art as opposed to doing art for other people.
That was the
Because
next thing I would like to ask you about. Have you done any gallery shows for yourself? And it sounds like you're
yeah,
trying to get into that.
right. It's kind of hard to get into, but I have now joined a artist association that has a lot of shows, and I'm working with that association, and I expect to have some kind of gallery show in the near future. But you have to have the art, and that's not an easy thing to do. You've got to, sit down and paint, and in certain ways, you're learning to do art in a very different way now. You don't have the digital advantages you do with Photoshop. You're back to moving a brush around and doing things like that. And
But that's the best. That's still one of the best parts, right? Still using a paintbrush and being more involved with the physical aspect of it, right?
yeah, I think it's more satisfying because you've made an actual unique object, that there is only one. Whereas when you do the digital paintings, they can be duplicated a million times. It's just not the same. So yeah, I have a lot of framed artwork here in my studio, and I'm continuing to work on that kind of thing. And then I teach my class, so I have
Hmm.
a I think I have a nice breakup of my time, and I'm fairly content with the way things are. And then sometimes I still may work on a movie if somebody calls me to do something.
For a
Um,
showcase, would you prefer what mediums would you use? Would you use acrylic,
well,
oil?
I'm painting in oil on canvas. All of these are oil on canvas.
Okay.
I also paint entirely from imagination. I
Okay.
don't paint from photographs. I don't do any of that kind of thing. And I like to paint from imagination because I think it shows a little more what's going on with you on the inside. So
Indeed.
I can see, what do I think, and how am I looking at things, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So that's
And
a
yet and
challenge.
still it's someone else's interpretation of what they actually see when you're putting up your art.
I didn't quite catch the question.
And no question at all. It's just and when after you're done painting your piece, people get to still make their own interpretation of what they actually see.
Oh, sure, they do. Although I think art from the imagination is a little more captivating than, say, just painting something that's in front of you, like painting a model or painting a landscape that's in front of you. I find it very interesting, the psychological part of somebody's imagination creating the whole thing. So yeah, I find that satisfying, and uh, but like I say, it's weird. You don't do the art as fast. They take longer to do. They take weeks to do, whereas the digital stuff was done very, very quickly. So, but it's okay. It's okay. Like I say, it's a change. It's probably good for me. I can do this and that.
Okay.
Um,
What other artists would you like to do some collaboration works with?
oh
Are there
wow.
any 3 to 5?
Well, they're artists that I admire that I would never want to, they'd never want to do a collaboration with me. I mean, like I like Jean Michel Basquiat, but he's
Mm-hmm.
dead, unfortunately, but
Mm-hmm.
I think he's fantastic.
That's fine. It's
And
still one of yours, you know? That's all that
yeah,
matters.
if I could be a painter, I'd love to paint like that guy, but I don't know. I don't know how he does it. And then, um, let's see, I like, well, there's an artist named Francis Bacon that I like very much too, but he's also passed away.
Mm-hmm.
The I would like, actually, if I could really work with somebody, there's an animation director named Brad Bird who created The Incredibles for
Okay.
Pixar,
Okay.
and he also did Ratatouille.
Mm.
And I would like I would like a chance to work with him because I think I could bring something to his films that would be pretty interesting. But I don't know that that's in the cards. I'm getting a little bit along in years. I'm not the young guy I was,
Okay.
and sometimes there is a little bit of oh, I don't know. When I go into a movie studio now and they're doing an animated film, everybody's half my age.
Very
So
true.
it's like,
Very
oh
true.
boy,
And
there you go.
they
But
they
there
have the
is
vigor and they're
so
excited and they're trying to prove themselves and everything. So
yeah, and there isn't oh, how can I put it? I feel like I could teach those kids a lot, but there's also a little bit of pride there, and that they don't want me to tell them how to do things. I'll do it myself. So
mhm.
okay, but that's fine. But yeah, I actually think I'm at the peak of my illustration and artistic skills now. I think I'm at the best I've ever been. But that's now been translated into this Zoom art school that I run. And I teach 3 different classes, and I probably get, I don't know, 25, 30 students maybe 30 every term. And I really enjoy it. It's just really, how can I describe it? I like to just pass the knowledge on and see other people improve. And I sometimes get some of my old clients to
Okay.
hire the class and have them do some artwork for you. And they've done it. I've had some actually hire the class, and they get to make some money in my class. So that's a nice aspect of it.
Have you had a chance to work for Pixar or at Pixar?
I actually did get a call from Pixar back when they were doing Monsters Inc. But I was on a movie at the time that was paying me, I'd say, pretty astronomical pay
Okay.
because I had just gotten off of Shrek, and we'd done this test, and I could prove that I could production design in 3D. They needed me really badly, and they paid me a lot of money. And then I got this call, would you like to work on Monsters Inc.? And I turned it down. And I said, I want to stick with this film.
Okay.
And really, what's sad is that movie that I was working on was a Penguin movie, and they canned it after 2 years. So they they got cold feet and decided, up, I don't think we can do this. And it's a
Okay.
shame because I think a year or two later, a Penguin movie came out called Happy Feet that made a ton of money.
Yes, it did.
And
Yes, it did.
we could have been that movie very easily, except they lost their nerve. So the way it goes.
Indeed.
But yeah, I would say also a lot of movies. I would say having got 4 movies to the screen, there are a lot of people that, you know, they're lucky to get 1 movie as production designer. And it's I've had several movies that I worked on get canceled, and that's just part of the business. I worked 2 years trying to make Mighty Mouse into a digital feature film.
Wow.
And man, I tell you, that thing was looking good. And then they backed out. It was Paramount. They backed out for some reason. I don't know.
Mm.
But people backing out, it's not surprising because those digital things are expensive, and
I
they don't want
understand
to
that, but
risk.
do you ever ask those questions about it, or do you just go ahead and keep on moving after they back out, or they
Oh, I always want to know why, but you're
okay.
never going to get the real answer.
Okay.
It's like they'll say something like, what they often do is they say, well, we have script problems, so we're going to lay everybody off until we get the script straightened out. And now it's been 15 years. So that's kind of what happens. They kind of sugarcoat it like, oh, we just need to fix this little thing, and then we'll have you right back, and then you never hear from them again. So you can't put any stock in that.
Would you ever
So
like to be a art director?
well, production designer is actually the thing that is above art director. So yeah,
Okay, okay.
yeah.
Excuse me. All right.
No, no, I
All
just
right.
telling you that generally speaking, the production designer will hire the art director.
Okay.
So the production designer is the next person to the director of the movie. So if you want to know if I'd like to direct a movie, the answer is yes, I would like to do that. That'd be the top job. That'd be the neat one to do. But I haven't had any real prospects, although I did make my own short film and I did take it to festivals. I did do that kind of thing. I also wrote my own children's book, wrote and illustrated my own children's book that is for sale with HarperCollins. HarperCollins printed it.
Okay. Would you ever take the time out to do a actual film, but not just a short film, but a full
Oh, an
length?
actual feature. Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing is, I'll tell you, I did a 7 minute feature film. I mean, 7 minute short film by myself.
Mm-hmm.
It nearly killed me. It was one
Wow.
of the hardest things I have ever done. I
Okay.
mean, because when you're working digitally and you're learning to animate the character to look and say and act in a certain way,
Mm-hmm.
oh boy, that's complicated. And then you have to edit it. Then you have, well, first you have to design it. You have to do all those things. And, I don't have a studio full of employees. I have to do it myself. And it took about 4 years. But I would work on it on the weekends, be like a little weekend thing where I'd work a day here, work a day there, and gradually build this film up. But it did tell me that I can do it. I can direct. I can tell a story. And I think I told a pretty good story. And most people like my short film. So yeah, it would be super great if some studio saw the short film and thought, hey, you could actually direct a feature, couldn't you? Hasn't happened. So
Okay.
I don't know. I've gone back to painting, and really, I'm probably painting is probably where I belong.
Okay. So you don't plan on going back to doing short films?
I probably won't do another short film. I don't think so.
Gotcha.
I would like to give painting a try, a serious try, and see where I can go with that. Um, I,
Oil-based painting. What made you choose that over
well, when
watercolors
I
or
read about,
acrylic?
Francis Bacon, I read about Basquiat, I read about all the greats. They use oil,
Mm-hmm.
and they say oil is the most subtle medium that you can get great subtlety in the medium itself. And I think it's true. You can move your brush and change the expression on somebody's face with just one little touch. So it's a pretty sensitive medium. And I'm trying to master it, but it's going to take time to master it. But I'm improving, and I'm hopeful that I'll make something really good and maybe even make something that's great. So if I could do that, that'd be satisfying. I'd very much like that kind of thing. But I don't, it's one of those things you have to be doing it because you like the art, and you can't have a money-making scheme or anything behind it. You have to just be saying, I want to make the best art I can. So that's where
Okay.
I'm at.
Okay. So other than that, are there any other projects that you have coming up?
Let's see. Um, Well, I get called on things, but it's kind of funny. I don't like to, there's a company in India that has a horror film they're interested in using me for, but it's kind of like, it could happen, it could not happen. There's a stop motion studio near where I live that's doing a sort of Princess and Goblin movie, and I've done some art for it, done some development work for it, but I don't know that they'll hire me to come in and be the production designer. I'd really like it. And they've talked to me about that. They've talked to me about art directing it. But, they have to land the job. They have to get the money. They have
Mm-hmm.
to get all that straightened out. So truthfully, I get called, you know, fairly often about jobs, but then having that job actually appear and it's there and it's bulletproof and we're going to do it, that's another story. So but I don't, I'm at a point in my career where I don't have to work all the time.
Which is a
So
beautiful
I
thing,
choose,
right?
what, pardon me?
It's a beautiful thing, right? Because you get to make the decision on when you decide to
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I earned a lot of money in the for first part of my career, and then, now I have it much easier. So I can choose to go into my own painting studio and just paint what I want to, and we'll see if it eventually turns into a career as a painter. So I would love it if that happened. But I think that's a tall mountain to climb. But
for
I'm
you, that would
taking,
be like a would that be like a second career then, going off into painting?
yeah, it would be like a second career. Although it's closely related to my first career of
Hmm.
doing art for clients. The only thing that's different about it is when you're working for yourself, you got nobody to blame but yourself.
That's the only
So
person.
if it doesn't turn out, it's kind of like that's nobody's fault but your own. So that's the thing that you know I deal with, but it's okay. It's like you know I'm tough guy to work for, but I'm hopeful I'll do something really good.
All right, right. And you know yourself better than anyone else does, so you know how much of the work that you can actually do and create and be responsible for as well.
Right. I also enjoy. I wanted to say I also enjoy Instagram. I think that's a fun thing to, as I do art, I put it on there. Sometimes I find old pieces of mine, I put it on there. And it's interesting to hear what the younger kids say about it. I like that, that they'll like things that are hand painted a lot more than Photoshop things. I notice that. And if I do an oil painting and I put it on Instagram, they tend to like it a lot more commentary, things like that. So it sort of lets me know where the young kids are at these days and what they're interested in.
Okay.
So I like that. Actually, my whole class that I teach came from my Instagram followers.
Okay.
So I find Instagram to be pretty interesting.
All right. Barry Jackson, it has been a pleasure talking to you. I look forward to more conversations with you.
Oh man, thank you, Matthew. That's
Yes,
great.
indeed. If
It's
there
a
was a word of encouragement or inspiration you could leave, what would it be?
a word of inspiration. Well, with me, you know, I think part of it was finding my tribe. Like you said, you find your tribe. That's good to have people around you that share your interests. That's a step one thing. Then there's another thing about not giving up when it gets tough. Because I've run into brick walls and I've sometimes had a very hard time completing a picture and not knowing what to do. But I will stick with that picture until it eventually gets done. It may take a week, it may take a year, but I'll I always want to finish what I start. I think that's a good thing to do. Uh, don't give up. Um, I think too, it's important to have a lot of input. Here, that's the different thing. Like you're outputting when you're painting, but you also need input. You
Hmm.
know, I actually gave a TED talk on creativity. And if you go Barry Jackson TED Talk, you can find my TED Talk on creativity, but it deals with that. That a creative person needs things coming in, and you need time to process the things that come into your mind. And that can sometimes really inspire you and really make you a more creative person.
Hmm.
But if you're kind of locked away and you're not getting the stimulation, that can be detrimental to being creative. You can, let's see, uh, like artists should go to museums and look at art. You should go to galleries and look at art and see what other people are doing and other people's ideas. That's really important to do. It's important to have friends who are artists so you can talk to them about what's the coolest show to see now. That type of things. A movie, a really creative movie can just leave me dumbfounded. I just love going to like a really, really great great film or music too. You should
Indeed.
broaden
Indeed.
your taste in music and get your brain working a little different, and that's another good thing. So yeah, you want input, you want your tribe, and you want to have output and process. So
As far as music, I'm gonna leave you with a group called Fearless Flyers. Have you ever heard of them?
I don't know Fearless Flyers. No,
You should check them out. Fearless
I'll check them
Flyers.
out.
I'll send you some of their info over
Oh,
Instagram.
that's very nice of you to do. I
Yes,
appreciate that.
indeed. All right. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, remember the mission statement when you're striving for greatness. God never puts you in the driver's seat if it's taking. Again, my guest today was Barry E. Jackson. We appreciate you coming on the podcast. Thank you for stopping by, sir.
Okay, thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Yes, sir. Have a good night.
Okay.